Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on A News, and thank you for staying with me this morning. Now let's turn to the region. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says Turkey will continue supporting neighboring countries and working for regional peace. The statement came after Israeli strikes on Syria.
Bize güvenen hiçbir dostumuzu
We will not abandon any friend or brother who has placed their trust in us halfway.
birileri istemiyor.
Just because some people do not want it, because some people are worried, because some people's plans are being disrupted, we will not refrain from striving to establish peace in our region. Nor will we give up supporting our neighbors in recovering, just because criminal networks with the blood of innocents on their hands are disturbed by it.
Now, global leaders at the Silk Road Finance and Technology Forum in Tashkent in Uzbekistan are discussing where the future of financial technology could lie. Could Central Asia be the next frontier for fintech companies? Well, our correspondent Civil Rajapova takes a look at this development.
Regulators, investors and technology companies from across the world are here at the Silk Road Finance and Technology Forum in Tashkent. Fintech has already become an established part of the financial system in the US, Europe and China. In Africa and the Middle East, the sector is growing rapidly, attracting billions of dollars in investment. However, Central Asia is still at an earlier stage. But with a growing population of more than 80 million, growing digital adoption and increasingly supportive regulation, the region is starting to attract attention. That leaves room for new payment systems, digital banking, financial services and fintech startups to grow. And countries across the region are already building the infrastructure and regulation to support them.
So I think Uzbekistan's ambition is realistic, provided it is positioned as a regional hub rather than trying to directly replicate established global centers like Singapore or Dubai. Uzbekistan has several important advantages: a large and relatively young population, a young digital economy, rapid development of fintech and digital banking, and a strategic geographic position at the center of Central Asia. The key challenge is to convert these advantages into a credible platform for regional growth.
The numbers suggest the opportunity for fintech in Central Asia is significant. Uzbekistan alone already has more than 100 fintech companies and is hoping to double that figure by 2030. The country also aims to attract $1 billion in foreign investment into financial technology and train more than 5,000 professionals. The region is still smaller than the established fintech markets of the US, Europe and China. Whether Central Asia can turn that potential into the next major fintech hub will depend on how quickly investment, technology and regulation develop together. Civil Rajapova, Natik Mamedov and Khalid Aliyev reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Bokhodir Ayupov is the Vice President of Global Business Development Enterprise in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. He'll join me now live to discuss this regional story. Hello and welcome to the Daybreak program.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me here.
So Uzbekistan is attracting a growing investment in fintech and digital finance. What is changing in the country that is now making investors take notice?
Well, I think there are several factors affecting this. First, the itself has become more interesting. Uzbekistan now has more than 38 young population and a very rapid digital adoption. Second, I think we spent several years building the ecosystem, IT park, startup programs, technology education, incentive for exporters, digital government, fintech infrastructure. So companies coming today are entering an empty market. And third, I think the regulatory ambition has changed. We're no longer asking, how do we attract more IT companies? We are asking a bigger question: what kind of jurisdiction do global technology companies actually need? And Enterprise Uzbekistan, which I am privileged to represent today, is pro that thinking. And you can already see the results. In the first half of this year, almost 340 companies joined IT as residents, which is more than double the number of the same period last year. Today, there are more than 1,000 IT park companies with foreign capital. So I would say the interest is no longer theoretical. The companies actually coming.
Now, Uzbekistan is trying to become the main fintech center for Central Asia. Is that correct?
That is the plan. Yes, that is the plan.
What does Uzbekistan then offer the international tech companies that they may not find elsewhere within the region?
Well, there are several parallel, very large incentives for tech companies. Enterprise Uzbekistan become is one of them. Now, I don't think our ambition, should be simply to say, we want to be number one in Central Asia. No, because Central Asia is becoming interesting as a region, in its own right. It's a market of more than 80 million people. What Uzbekistan, I think, can do is become one of the main gates into that market. But globally, the proposition of ours is slightly different. We want Uzbekistan to become a location from which international technology companies can build teams, develop products, raise and deploy capital, and serve international markets. That is why Enterprise Uzbekistan matters. We're trying to combine Uzbekistan's costs and talent advantages with a legal environment that international investors already understand. If we succeed, Uzbekistan becomes, rather than simply another desk for outsourcing, it becomes a jurisdiction from which global technology businesses can actually operate.
But I'm glad you spoke about the advantages. And of course, we cannot do that without talking about some of the challenges that might come through. So those foreign companies then that want to come into Uzbek, what is the biggest obstacle that can be looked forward to, that can be solved possibly in the future?
Well, I think I would differentiate them into practical barriers and legal barriers. On the practical side, international companies still sometimes struggle with banking, payments, hiring internationally, moving capital across borders, navigating government procedures. That is there. Then there's the legal side. Global technology companies are used to very sophisticated corporate structures. They need instruments for venture financing, options, for example, intellectual property protection, flexible contracts, what else is there? Cross-border transactions and predictable dispute resolution. Our traditional legislation was simply not designed around all of those business models. And I think it is important to be open about that. Instead of pretending those gaps do not exist, Uzbekistan has chosen to create a special jurisdiction where many of these issues can be addressed much faster. That is essentially the rationale behind Enterprise Uzbekistan.
That's a fantastic breakdown. So how does Uzbekistan approach cryptocurrencies and blockchain as these industries develop globally and not just perhaps in the region?
Well, you know, for conventional technology companies, the most established route today is through the normal Uzbek framework. And eligible technology companies can also apply for IT park residents, receive the relevant incentives. Fintech is regulated primarily through the central bank, depending on the activity. Uzbekistan now has a national fintech strategy for 2026-2030, and our central bank is expanding its regulatory sandbox, open banking framework, and other fintech infrastructure. Crypto is a separate regulated area. The National Agency for Prospective Projects, or as we call it, NAPP, is the licensing authority. There are specific licenses for crypto exchanges, crypto depositories, crypto stores, and mining pools. And I will also have Enterprise Uzbekistan, which introduces a dedicated jurisdictional framework specifically designed for international businesses. The constitutional law, and yes, it is a constitutional law, not just a traditional law, that is very specific. The constitutional law provides for simplified registration and licensing mechanisms within jurisdiction. We're already engaged with our potential registrations companies interested in Uzbekistan can start that dialogue with us now. And I think the important distinction here is that our approach is not about regulation; it is about creating regulation that actually fits modern technology business models, including the ability to use regulatory sandbox.
Mr. Ayupov, the Vice President of Global Business Development Enterprise in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. Thank you so much for those incredible insights, breaking down what is actually taking place in that part of the region.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
All right, so now what we're looking at is Soka, which has recently unveiled its latest consolidated financial report, highlighting strong financial performance in 2025. The company's operating profit increased by 80.1%, exceeding $3 billion. The results also reflect improved operational efficiency and profitability across Soka's score. We look at the story now.
The growth reflects improved operational efficiency as well as profitability across the company's core business activities. Meanwhile, net profit reached around $1.73 billion. Some additional points I would like to highlight include a 22.5% decrease in long-term liabilities, a 2.3% increase in total assets, and we are looking at around $57 billion for total assets. And current assets have also increased by 7.4%, reaching almost $18 billion. Overall, 2025 was a really strong year for SOCAR, with the company improving its profitability, efficiency, while expanding its international portfolio.
Now on to some lighter news this morning. Sabah FC has made club history with a stunning comeback against Hapoel Beersheva. After losing the first leg 2-1, Sabah fought back to win 5-2 after the extra time, securing their first ever in the UEFA Champions League phase. The players shared their reactions after the historic victory.
Fireworks outside Tawfik Baramov Stadium. Champions League football is coming back to Azerbaijan, and the team to bring it home was Sabah, a club that was formed not even 10 years ago. 4 qualifying rounds, 30,000 kilometers traveled, 8 matches, and they've done it. Valdas Dambrauskas, Sabah's head coach, promised us a game we do remember, and boy did they deliver. Remember that 1 goal deficit happen? Well, nobody overturns a game like Saba. It was looking like a very different outcome until the 94th minute, but then in swoops Taylor Butelimov, who equalised that aggregate in the 94th minute, and in extra time comes Orfeh Mbina in the 101st minute. And of course, what's a game without a goal from Joy Lance Michael, making the final score 5-2. What an incredible achievement for Saba. So don't put that Champions League flag away just yet.
It's amazing feelings because we did it first time. First we get a champion. Even our team not more than 10 years. That's why I think big achievement, big goals. We did it.
Everybody was tired. Me, I was dead. I went out because of my body, my legs, but we fight until the end. We gave everything to fight for our dream because it's a dream.
The majority in our team is like really faithful, like they believe. And everybody was like, okay, if God or Allah is giving us in the last minute a 2-2, then why should he at the end like disappoint us? So we thought, even he said like, keep on going, work, and that's why we didn't stop running, you know.
The energy levels where our KT Wilson was clearly palpable and transferring all the way to our studio. Now moving on, could plastic waste become part of the answer for future food shortages? Researchers in Illinois are testing an unusual technology that could turn materials normally destined for the bin into food.
Scientists have used engineered yeast to turn compounds derived from plastic bottles and crop waste into protein for 3D printed cookies. The technology is called microbites.
We convert both crop waste and plastic waste into its initial building blocks and feed those initial building blocks to a consortium or a group of engineered yeast. They convert this initial building blocks into protein, and then we use that protein to 3D print our protein cookies.
Researchers break down polyethylene terephthalate, or PET, the plastic commonly used in water and fizzy drink bottles, along with agricultural leftovers such as corn stalks and leaves. The team has also engineered yeast to produce vanilla flavoring from plant material, while another strain can turn a PET-derived compound into beta-carotene, a precursor to vitamin A. The work at Southern Illinois University Carbondale is part of NASA's Deep Space Food Challenge, which explores ways of producing food where resources are limited. Researchers say the approach could eventually be used in places where conventional food production is difficult, including disaster zones, submarines, and on space missions. The cookies are still experimental and a long way from supermarket shelves. Associate Professor Lahiru Jayakody says the technology could one day make use of carbon-rich waste in extreme environments, including the Arctic and desert regions, as well as on Mars or the lunar surface. For now, microbites remains a research project, but one aimed at turning waste into a potential food source.
Now, I wonder if any of you, our viewers, could try that food. But anyway, that's it for this Wednesday morning. Thank you for joining me, Team Tongana, and the Daybreak team. Stay tuned to A News on all our streaming platforms, on YouTube and our website. And also, be sure to follow us on social media. Goodbye. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak. Now let's have a look at those global stories. The head of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, has made a rare and unannounced visit to Moscow for high-level talks. Flight tracking data confirms a U.S. military transport plane landed in the capital of Russia on Tuesday, with diplomatic motorcades later spotted in the city. Reports indicate Washington asked Ukraine to temporarily suspend its strikes while the American delegation was on the ground. Neither side has officially confirmed the agenda, but analysts suggest the high-stakes trip could focus on managing military escalation or securing the release of U.S. detainees. Russia and Ukraine are preparing another major prisoner exchange, according to Moscow's officials. Russia's Human Rights Commissioner said both sides are finalizing the lists. The latest deal follows a similar swap on the 19th of August. That's when Moscow and Kiev each exchanged 103 servicemen with mediation from the United Arab Emirates. On Monday, both sides released 10 each, according to Belarus state news media Belta. Prisoner exchanges remain one of the few areas of direct cooperation between the two countries. The United States and Saudi Arabia are moving ahead with a major civilian nuclear energy agreement reached last month, but the deal comes with a key political condition. Here's more on the story.
A major US-Saudi nuclear deal is now tied to a breakthrough in relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. President Donald Trump has sent the proposed 30-year civil nuclear agreement to Congress. But a US administration official told Reuters it will only take effect if Riyadh joins the Abraham Accords and normalizes relations with Israel. The deal, agreed in July between the two countries, would allow US companies to supply civilian nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia, including AP-1000 reactors in a project worth tens of billions of dollars. The agreement was sent to congressional leaders on Monday and is expected to reach committees on Wednesday. Then Congress will have 90 session days to consider it. Trump has repeatedly linked the nuclear pact to Saudi-Israeli normalization, a position also pursued by former President Joe Biden. Riyadh had appeared close to establishing ties with Israel in 2023, but Israel's war in Gaza changed the situation. Then, Saudi Arabia insisted on an irreversible path towards a Palestinian state before recognizing Israel. The Abraham Accords, brokered by Washington, led Israel to establish diplomatic relations with the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan in 2020 and 2021. The nuclear project could be worth tens of billions of dollars and benefit Westinghouse, jointly owned by Canada-based Cameco and Brookfield Asset Management. The Saudi embassy in Washington has not yet commented.
Now, Instagram chief Adam Mosseri has denied claims that Meta tried to hide negative information about the platform's impact on children. Mosseri appeared in court as 29 U.S. states accuse Meta of designing Instagram and Facebook to keep young users engaged while failing to properly address safety risks. Meta has said it's worked hard to protect children on its social media. The states allege the platforms contributed to mental health problems among children and improperly collected data from users under 13. They are seeking potentially billions of dollars in penalties. Canada is responding to new U.S. tariffs with its own trade measures, targeting hundreds of American products. Ottawa says the move is aimed at protecting Canadian businesses and workers while launching businesses or billions of dollars in support for affected industries.
Canada has announced retaliatory tariffs on more than 700 US products worth 27.6 billion Canadian dollars, or around 20 billion US dollars. The measures will take effect on September 8th and match the value of the latest US tariffs on Canadian goods, according to the Canadian government.
Today I'm announcing that Canada will match the United States tariffs dollar for dollar, rate for rate. Effective September 8, Canada will impose counter tariffs of up to 15, 25, or 50% on $27.6 billion in imports from the United States of America. For each product, our tariff would match the American tariff on the same type of Canadian good.
The new duties will cover sectors including steel, aluminium, dairy products, agricultural equipment, electronics, and household appliances. Canada will also increase some existing tariffs on steel and aluminium products from 25 to 50%, while measures on US automobiles will remain in place. Alongside the tariffs, Ottawa announced a $7.5 billion Canadian dollar support package for businesses and workers affected by the trade dispute. The government says the program will provide financial assistance, loans and other support.
And so our government is introducing a $7.5 billion package of new enhanced measures. So this package includes a lot of support through different agencies. So if you're a small business right now, you have to contact either your regional development agency or the BDC, which you're potentially already working with.
The latest measures follow Washington's decision to impose 50% tariffs on selected Canadian imports after trade talks between the two countries broke down. Canadian officials say the counter-tariffs are designed to protect domestic industries and encourage consumers to support Canadian-made products. Ottawa says it will continue to defend Canadian economic interests while managing relations with its largest trading partner. The new tariffs mark another escalation in the trade dispute between Canada and the United States, with businesses on both sides watching the impact of the measures.
Germany says it is preparing to reveal more details about a suspected drone attack near one of its busiest cargo airports. The incident, involving explosives and military-related infrastructure, has raised fresh concerns over security threats and possible hybrid attacks in Europe. Anita Sharma has the details from the Netherlands.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, where Germany is preparing to disclose who is behind an attempted drone attack on the country's second busiest cargo airport. Chancellor Friedrich Merz says Berlin will soon reveal what it knows about the incident at Leipzig Airport earlier this month, where a drone carrying explosives was discovered near Ukrainian cargo planes loaded with ammunition. Merz said the incident shows Germany is facing a very real threat and is increasingly becoming a target, warning those responsible would pay a price. Investigators now believe at least 3 drones may have been involved. The first was found near a Ukrainian Antonov cargo aircraft used to transport military equipment. Investigators say the attack failed because a detonator apparently malfunctioned. A second drone is believed to have collided with a DHL cargo plane after the airport was shut down. Damage was later found on the aircraft's tail, with investigators reportedly ruling out a bird strike. A third drone was discovered in a nearby field on August 14th. Now, investigators also recovered DNA evidence, a high-frequency antenna, and around 50 grams of suspected hexogen, a powerful military explosive. German security sources suspect Russian intelligence may have been involved, but Berlin has not formally accused Moscow, and Russia denies responsibility. Leipzig is both a major European freight hub and an important logistics point for NATO and Ukraine, making the case another test of Europe's ability to protect critical infrastructure from increasingly sophisticated hybrid attacks. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
China and India have held the 25th round of talks on their long-standing boundary dispute. Officials discussed border management, bilateral ties, and ways to strengthen cooperation. Both sides said they remain committed to dialogue and finding a fair, mutually acceptable solution to the issue. The next round of talks is expected to take place in India in 2027. Now to another quick break. When we return, I'll discuss our regional stories. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Daybreak on the A News channel. My name is Atim Tongana, coming to you live from Baku in Azerbaijan this Wednesday morning. Let's see the headlines. Iran and Oman are discussing a temporary Strait of Hormuz corridor as the diplomatic impasse with Washington drags on. The CIA made a rare unannounced visit to Moscow for contacts with Russian security services. And Trump's Saudi nuclear deal is now before Congress amid warnings over potential proliferation risks. All right, we begin with the Middle East. Tensions around the Strait of Hormuz continue to shape regional and global security as Iran and Oman work on a temporary plan to restore commercial shipping. At the same time, Washington is maintaining economic pressure on Tehran while diplomatic efforts continue to prevent further escalation.
Iran and Oman have agreed to establish a temporary navigation corridor through the Strait of Hormuz as Tehran faces growing economic pressure from the United States. However, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Garibabadi said on X that it doesn't mean the waterway will open immediately. He added that once open, the arrangement would allow only commercial vessels to pass through the strategic waterway, while military ships would not be permitted. The two countries also agreed to cooperate on clearing mines from the strait and plan to negotiate a longer-term navigation arrangement within the next 30 to 60 days. The United States says its forces have cleared mines, while Iran has rejected the claim and warned that any U.S. mine-clearing vessels entering the area would be considered targets. Washington is continuing to increase economic pressure on Tehran, announcing new sanctions and warning countries doing business with Iran could face penalties. Britain has supported the U.S. approach, while Qatar said it would not join the pressure campaign unless sanctions are approved internationally. Meanwhile, U.S. officials say Washington does not expect new military strikes against Iran in the near term, focusing instead on economic and maritime measures. The Strait of Hormuz is a key global energy route, but shipping through the waterway has been heavily disrupted since the war began at the end of February. The conflict has also caused damage to U.S. facilities in the region. According to NBC News reports, Iranian missile and drone attacks damaged U.S. intelligence sites and surveillance equipment, with repairs expected to cost billions of dollars. Despite the tensions, the United States has started returning some diplomatic personnel to Middle Eastern missions that were reduced during the crisis. However, public support for the war has fallen in the United States, with recent polling showing declining approval of the conflict and lower ratings for President Donald Trump ahead of November's congressional elections. Diplomatic efforts continue as both sides seek to prevent further escalation and restore safer passage through one of the world's most important shipping routes.
Now, the framework between Iran and Oman's foreign ministers was discussed during their talks in Tehran. A News correspondent Toraj Shiralilu has more on the story.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and his Omani counterpart Badr al-Busaidi met in Tehran on Tuesday, a day after Pakistan's Army Chief General Asim Munir, who is also a key negotiator in the Iran-US talks, visited the Islamic Republic. According to official sources, the two senior diplomats exchanged views on Tehran-Muscat ties and regional developments as part of routine diplomatic consultations between their respective countries. Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghai told a weekly press conference on Monday that as countries bordering the Strait of Hormuz, Iran and Oman would discuss navigation through the strategic waterway during the talks in Tehran. Both Pakistan and Oman have acted as mediators between Iran and the US, helping to secure a fragile ceasefire memorandum of understanding in June. But the agreement has been repeatedly breached, mainly amid the Tehran-Washington dispute over maritime transit through the strait. Meanwhile, Iran and the US appear to be bracing for a prolonged standoff over the waterway, with tensions reaching a fresh impasse after the US Treasury Secretary announced tougher economic sanctions on Monday. Iran has warned that it will shift from a defensive to a more aggressive military posture if the US blockade of its southern ports, imposed in the wake of the joint Israeli-US war, continues. Oman and Iran have been in talks over the management of maritime traffic through the strait, which links the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Tehran says it has reached an agreement in principle with Muscat on shipping corridors through the narrow strait. However, it blames the US for pressuring Oman not to accept Iran's terms, including the introduction of navigation fees and a ban on foreign military vessels passing through the waterway. According to Foreign Ministry spokesman Baghai, there was no connection between the visits of General Munir and Omani Foreign Minister Al-Busaidi. He reiterated that Iran and Oman would discuss bilateral ties and regional developments, adding that Tehran regards the Strait of Hormuz as an issue to be dealt with bilaterally with Muscat. The Omani Foreign Minister is scheduled to meet other senior Iranian officials during his stay in Iran. Turaj Shiralilu from Tehran for A News.
The United States has officially removed Syria from its list of state sponsors of terrorism. The diplomatic shift ends decades of sanctions, clearing the way for Damascus to attract foreign investment to rebuild after 14 years of civil war.
After decades on a US terrorism blacklist, Syria is officially open for international business. The historic delisting took effect on Monday following a congressional review in Washington. In a national video address, Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa hailed the decision as a turning point that ends years of economic and diplomatic isolation.
In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you. Today, Syria is shaking off a dark burden and tearing out a painful chapter of its past to embark on a path of development, reconstruction, and rebuilding. Great people of Syria, you have done it again. The sanctions have been lifted and the restrictions removed. I ask God Almighty to help us serve you.
Washington originally imposed the terror designation in 1979 under the rule of Hafez al-Assad. It remained in place until well after his son, Bashar, was ousted in December 2024 by a rebel coalition led by al-Sharaa. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the removal recognizes the new government's commitment to fully distance itself from international terrorism. It also follows intense bilateral negotiations, which reportedly included Damascus agreeing to drastically reduce its imports of Russian oil. The diplomatic shift is drawing regional support, with neighboring Turkey welcoming the move as a vital step towards Syria's recovery. The impact is already being felt in the corporate sector. With the terrorism label finally lifted, major global firms including Bank of America and MasterCard are now in talks to help reintegrate the country into the international financial system.
Now life and hope return to Aleppo's historic markets. Besides restoring its international ties, Syria is also making progress in rebuilding its historic sites. Once devastated by war, Aleppo's ancient souks are now being restored.
More than half of Aleppo's historic markets have been restored, marking a major step in efforts to revive the city's war-damaged old city. The centuries-old souks are a maze of vaulted stone passages and carved wooden shops stretching for around 13 kilometers. Once a major Silk Road trading hub, the markets were home to shops selling everything from soap and jewelry to clothes. For restoration teams, preserving the character of the historic markets was a key priority.
The old markets of Aleppo are part of Aleppo's cultural identity. We carried out several tasks during the study phase, such as collecting old photos of these markets, communicating with shop owners, and matching survey plans with reality in order to be able to preserve the cultural character of this market as it was in the past.
The old city suffered extensive destruction during the war that reached Aleppo in 2012. Airstrikes and shelling damaged and destroyed sections of the medieval markets during more than 4 years of fighting. Reconstruction began after government forces recaptured the city in 2016. Now, restoration is allowing some of the historic markets to reopen, and shopkeepers who were displaced for years are returning to work.
I returned to my shop after 13 years. After it was restored, thank God, I came back to my work and started operating again, just like all the other people who own shops in the old markets, such as in Al-Madina Souk, Al-Muhammas, Al-Hubays, and Al-Sakatiya. They too will return, rebuild, take over their shops, and practice their professions.
The restoration is bringing parts of Aleppo's historic heart back to life, while efforts continue to preserve the old city, which remains a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Lamine Jadid is a political analyst in Geneva, Switzerland, and joins me live now for a discussion on this historic move by the US to remove Syria from its terrorism list. Hello and welcome to the Daybreak program.
Hello, thank you for having me.
All right, so beyond the opening of Syria's economy, what does Washington actually gain strategically from bringing Damascus back into the Western orbit?
Washington now it's going through a war in the Middle East, and this war is not going so well for the administration of Mr. Trump. So first, it goes as a victory for him now to announce that he took a step that Obama administration could not do for years. So this is diplomatically could play for Mr. Trump, or even internally just some kind of a victory while he's going through difficulties in his administration now with his administration. So this is first. Second, I think he will, it's helping creating some kind of a stable buffer zone in the Middle East between two conflicting powers like Turkey and Israel. And third, maybe allowing part of the oil that's produced in Syria to be maybe to go to the Western sphere more than going to Russia. And of course, cutting the ties between the resistance tie, if we could say, between Iran and Lebanon. But the main reason here came recently after Syria announced a meeting between the Mossad, the Israeli Mossad and the foreign minister, the Syrian foreign minister. And this is to go for some kind of a security agreement, and maybe this agreement might proceed even to some kind of cooperation in case of any development in the region, mainly concerning Lebanon, I think. And this will be, for me, it's an alert much more than any other cooperation. Simply just between two countries. It's a huge step for Syria first to cooperate against the resistance first that worked since the 79 in this camp of resistance supporting the Palestinian cause, and now turning against it in a way and preparing maybe to enter Lebanon in the next step. All this depends on how Turkey also will perceive this cooperation. It's to be seen.
Yeah. So what I'm getting from you then is what Washington might benefit from Syria is perhaps oil, security, and like you said, like a buffer zone. But I also want to find out, could Washington also be strategically aligning itself then with Syria in the hopes of taking Syria away from leaning towards Russia or even China?
I think it's already done. I think Syria had shown already the line that will take in the future, or at least the transitional government that's leading Syria now. It showed its own way of understanding the Middle Eastern future architecture. But we are here speaking about removing, lifting completely sanctions first, removing Syria from the terrorist list as a country. But I don't think all this helped really the Syrian in any way, or helped improving the life in Syria. The Syrians, every day they are suffering. There is streets are not clean, there is garbage everywhere, electricity is available, but at the end it was a very, very high price. Salaries, they don't match the cost of living. So all this is to be questioned. And there is a small, tiny details about these sanctions that's still valid until today, even after lifting the sanctions, which is something that's called ESTA. ESTA, this does not any person from the European Union, from Asia, from Japan, Australia, America even, is not allowed to enter America after visiting Syria. This very small details in the sanctions that's still not lifted, this will help nobody to make any kind of business in Syria until today, because everybody who will visit Syria will be questioned, and any businessman does not want himself to be seen in this situation, that he cannot do his business in America or even visiting America again. So I think all this to be re-examined. Maybe it's just some kind of announcement, another announcement, because still this needs to be followed by the Congress, and we need to follow up. So Mr. Trump had given us lots of publicity around putting Syria in a new era, but on the ground we don't see anything really tangible.
You know, one of the main questions I always ask political analysts and experts is the impact then of the conflicts that take place around the world on the citizens on the ground. And I'm glad that you alluded to that. I mean, you even mentioned this ESTA sanctions side note that also bears the impact, the negative impact on the relations between Syria and the Western countries. Now, so how much faster could Syria now integrate into the international economy and attract reconstruction capital, and also on the humanitarian element, ease the burden of high costs of living for the people in Syria?
You know, it's been repeated a lot recently that security issues matters for any flourishing economy. We cannot ignore that security in Syria is a serious factor that prevents anybody from going and putting his asset there. Legal system is not clear yet. We have lots of questions still about many personalities that are leading the political scenes in Syria. We have internal issues about minorities issues, women's rights. We have many kidnapped women on a daily basis that needs to be put some light on. All this is being attracting money or assets. Nobody wants to live in a country where there is separate rules, where are separate communities, where is tension internally, where people are being kidnapped just because other, they need money or for security issues. All this needs to be discussed first, needs to be strengthened from within even the country. And the government is responsible for all of these aspects. Before going internationally and announcing victory, we need to build our base internally and not start from outside within.
Yeah, I'm wondering though, on those issues that you've just listed, including the issues that women negatively go through in Syria, this lifting of the sanctions by the United States, how does it bode, or how does it even reflect on al-Shaara's regime, on the people in Syria who are adversely impacted?
I think we are witnessing two realities that are, in a way, contradicting each other. We are watching on the news some reality, announcement, big victories, thanks to all big, from Mr. Shara, of course, I'm speaking. He's thanking everybody for promoting, for helping Syria. And then we have another reality. It's everyday life. It's the suffering. It's the lack of security. It's lack of the basic needs of any human that keeps his dignity even in Syria. Of course, legal system that is not declared until today, elections, all this are points to be discussed and to be asked from Mr. Shara before he's announcing any international victory. Of course, some people will have some hopes, but hopes does not give people bread, and hopes does not allow women to go to their universities and go back home untouchable, of course, because we have kidnapping, we have issues. Every day is difficult now for Syrians. So I think this is where we need to start from, and this is where Mr. Shara needs to put his all focus first.
Ms. Lamid Jadid, I would love to continue this conversation, but unfortunately we are running out of time. Perhaps we can bring you back on the program. Otherwise, thank you so much for your insights on A News.
Thank you for having me. Have a lovely day.
All right, after the break, we'll discuss the rest of the global stories this morning. Stay with us.